This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili Gata'a. Thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Tholohungva. Here are the headlines for Monday, November 23rd. President-elect Joe Biden is announcing top White House staff positions, building upon the diversity he promised on the campaign trail.
I'm proud of the coalition we put together, the broadest and most diverse coalition in history. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, progressives, moderates, conservatives, young, old, urban, suburban, rural, gay, straight, transgender, white, Latino, Asian, Native American.
Native Americans continue to urge President-elect Biden to make history by selecting New Mexico Representative Deb Haaland to lead the Department of Interior, which oversees tribes. A federal judge is ordering the Bureau of Indian Affairs to take lands into trust for the Miwok tribe in California. Lands in trust are owned by the federal government and are protected from taxation. This reaffirms a 1983 ruling the BIA never carried out. The dispute came to a head in 2005 when the local county notified the tribe that it was going to seize and sell the land and the casino on it for back taxes. If the land were in trust, the tribe would not have to pay taxes. A November 13th judgment in the U.S. District Court ruled in favor of the tribe. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act is turning 30 this month. The law requires federally funded schools and museums to engage in a process to repatriate remains and cultural items held by institutions. Before the law was passed, children's clothes with bloodstains and bones of ancestors were on display or in storage at museums and schools. Still, advocates say there are few penalties for institutions failing to follow NAGPRA. A sculpture of an Indigenous American woman is set to replace a toppled Civil War statue in Denver, Colorado. Harvey Pratt, a Sand Creek descendant and artist for the project, said the idea came to him in a dream. The sculpture depicts a woman at the Sand Creek Massacre, where 230 women, elders, and children lost their lives in 1864 when they were ambushed by the 1st and 3rd Colorado Cavalry. The woman bears an empty cradle board symbolizing the loss of her child. She is reaching north with one arm, symbolizing the direction of the tribe's retreat. The legislature will now decide how large the sculpture will be and how they will transport it from Oklahoma to Colorado. A new stamp featuring an Alaska Native design will be released in the new year. The design is a creation of Rico Whirl, who is Tlingit and Athabascan. The U.S. Postal Service unveiled his design of the stamp titled Raven Story as part of its Forever Stamp series. Whirl says he merged traditional artwork with modern design touches to create a gateway for others to learn about culture.
I wanted this to be a gateway for a greater community into learning about Tlingit culture. And so I did want to stick with that story because it is such a great gateway for learning about Tlingit culture and Tlingit history.
The Postal Service had plans to unveil the stamp at an event this summer, but it was canceled because of the pandemic. The rising number of COVID-19 cases is causing the Smithsonian to close all 8 of its museums starting today. This includes the National Museum of the American Indian. The Smithsonian says its top priority is making sure its guests and staff are safe. And due to the changing nature of the pandemic, they have not announced when the museums will reopen. The Washington football team is effectively shuttering its Original Americans Foundation. Owner Daniel Snyder says he founded the organization in 2014 to assist Native American communities. The move comes 4 months after Washington retired its previous team name, which was a racial slur as defined by the dictionary. According to state records, the team's decision effectively leaves it without funding. The team is also requesting the nonprofit remove any use of the Washington football team name, brand, or logo. The Washington Post first reported the team's move as part of its story about harassment allegations that were levied in 2014 against the foundation's executive director, Gary Edwards. The Red Lake Band of Ojibwe are beginning to rebuild a tribal utility. The tribe is located in Minnesota and says the utility will provide energy self-sufficiency, higher paying jobs, and a healthier environment. And the effort may become a model for using solar, microgrids, and a tribal-run utility as a path to energy sovereignty. Bob Blake is a Red Lake citizen and the founder of Solar Bear Installation. Blake says they're doing this for other nations as well. The tribe's 2 current solar projects were financed through crowdfunding. And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today for Monday, November 23rd. I'm Patty Thalahungva. We'll be right back with a look at a documentary detailing the right of subsistence hunting for one tribe in Montana. Each day here at Indian Country Today, we look around and see what news we can tell from our many different and unique tribal communities. Last summer, we had the pleasure of having Tsanavi Spoonhunter join our staff. She was a Chips Quinn Fellow and was a student at UC Berkeley at the time. After her fellowship was over, she returned to school and earned her master's degree from the Graduate School of Journalism at UC Berkeley with a focus on documentary filmmaking. Her thesis became the documentary Crow Country: Our Right to Food Sovereignty. The film profiles tribal members of the Crow Indian Reservation in Montana and their struggles to retain food security. And she joins us today to tell us more about her documentary. Welcome, Tsanavi. It's good to see you.
Hi, Patty. Thank you for having me.
Well, and absolutely. And first, congratulations. Your film, your documentary, recently won Best Documentary Short at the American Indian Film Festival.
Yes, it did. Thank you. And I'm very, very thankful for that because, you know, as a lot of people know, filmmaking is a lot of work. So it's nice to get some recognition.
It absolutely is. And it's, you know, a lot of effort goes into this. And let's start with that, you know, just looking around. I mean, there are so many stories, as I mentioned. We look around and there are so many stories to choose from in Indian country. How did you focus on the Crow people in Montana?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that, my fellowship up with Indian Country Today during that summer, because that's kind of what led me into researching a little bit more about the film and the issue, which stems from the court case Herrera versus Wyoming. I was closing out my fellowship with Indian Country Today, and I remember Mark Trahant talking a little bit about the court case, and even though, you know, the Herrera won, and the Crow case, the state of Wyoming still needed to set boundaries for Crow members to hunt. So currently, it's a lot for, currently tribal members can still get cited and fined right now in the state.
And so that kind of set you up to start looking into going to this reservation and then telling the story here. And what are some of the challenges? You know, you're not Crow, you're from you know, other tribes, and you don't live in that area. So the whole idea of traveling someplace, getting to know people, getting their trust. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because a lot of people who I've interviewed with previously, you know, they automatically assume because I'm Native American, I have, like, you know, I'm already welcomed, and it's, you know, it's different because like you said, I'm Arapaho and Paiute, I'm not Crow. And so going into the community, you know, it's just like with any work in journalism, trying to, you know, do some interviews, get to know people. And for myself with filmmaking, it was trying to cast. And so going out there, I was able to actually interview, and you see in the film, a journalist named Luella Bryn, who works at the Big Horton County News. And so she was wonderful. She put me in contact with tribal members that I was able to talk to that were actually working hard to overcome the food insecurity issue on the ground.
And give us an idea, you know, again, you know, so many people, whether they live in a city or whether they live in a rural area, you know, they have access to a grocery store, and it's like, it's almost, you know, no big deal to be able to go and pick up food, but that's not the case where you were.
Yeah, exactly. So on Crow in the film, I have a scene where it shows the only grocery store on the reservation burned down, and the owner, you know, decided that he didn't want to rebuild. And so it's really, really difficult for, you know, tribal members. I mean, you have to travel like anywhere from 15 to like an hour away just to get food. And yeah, so gas mileage is a factor where tribal members are, you know, going to get their produce, but then also the border towns, you know, there's issues in border towns in general, but with this one particularly, prices are a lot higher than you would see at other places in cities or whatnot.
So let's take a look at the start of your film and tell us what we're watching.
Yeah, so the introduction to my film, the first character you meet is Peggy White, well-known Buffalo. She has a nonprofit on the reservation called the Center Pole, and she's probably one of the only people on the reservation who are actively working to bring food to her community. So she travels to Billings, throughout the week, which is an hour away from her home. But then she also has a food bank on her property. And so the scene that you're seeing now is her at her food bank.
It's hard to believe because the reservation itself is more than 2 million acres, and are all 8,000 tribal citizens living on the reservation, or are some of them living on and others living off the reservation?
So that number that I gathered, the figure, the 8,000, it was from people who are living on the reservation. So I think there are over 10,000 enrolled tribal members, but currently 8,000 tribal members live on the reservation. And there are others, I might add that, non-native people living on the reservation as well.
And so all of them relying on that one grocery store that burned down, and then now on her efforts to bring food in. So how many people are actually going out and hunting and getting food in that way?
Yeah, so when I interviewed the hunter that I follow, his name is Prince Three Irons. When I interviewed him in the film, he talks about how like a couple hundred families rely on hunting during, throughout the year, even not even just during, hunting season or the winter months, but they have year-round hunting on the Crow Reservation.
And so you think about what they're doing to put food on the table, and how that's working out right now. How important is it now that we're in a pandemic? As people are being told to social distance, to not go around other people. How important has subsistence hunting and living become in this new world of a pandemic?
Yeah, it's really difficult for, like I said, it's just a lot more layers, difficulty for this community. I mean, I follow Peggy on Facebook, and they're taking precautions with their food deliveries, trying to social distance and doing all the protocol for that. Subsistence hunting, Prince hunts all the time. I think a lot of tribal members do, so that's pretty much the same. So, yeah.
And so your film is actually 20 minutes long, and I know that probably there's a lot that didn't get into the film itself. What are some of the stories you can share with us that didn't make it into the final documentary?
Yeah, so excuse me. There's one scene that I really, really wanted to include in the documentary, which is the commodities. A lot of federal, recognized tribes, excuse me, rely on commodities, commodity distribution services. It's one of the four, sources of food that tribal communities rely on outside of nonprofits. This is one of them. And for the Crow tribe, their food distribution service resides outside of the reservation, which, in a lot of tribal communities, that's not the case. And so that's, I really wanted to highlight that. I think it's one of the only food distribution commodity services that reside off of the reservation. And so that's something I wanted to highlight. Unfortunately, it just didn't make sense for a lot of viewers. They were like, why are we here? Because none of my characters were getting food at the time, so it's just kind of random.
Well, and that's so true. The commodities that are given out on reservations, that's a big part of the diet. And so how does that factor in? So so now you've finished this documentary here, and it's playing along in the film festival circuits, and everything's online now. You started this whole process before the pandemic. What were some of the changes you had to make as you completed your documentary, and now as your documentary is being played in these film festivals, all due to the pandemic?
Yeah, I had one last shoot to go out to Crow and do some more filming. For the film, it would have been a little bit longer, unfortunately. Like 2 days before I had to fly out for my last shoot, my professors were like, you can't go, and the majority of that decision making was because on my part, if I went to like a vulnerable community, because I was in California, so I was more of like a risk than anything else. And so I had to stay. And then, the whole film festival circuit, it's online. It's my first film festival kind of run, and I've never experienced it before, but it's just different, I guess. I don't know how to think any other way than what I am right now and the process that I'm going through right now. So I guess that's a little bit positive in a way.
Yeah, it's just, who would have thought a year ago things were so different, and then now we're in the midst of this pandemic. So, and that's very interesting too, that looking at how much of a risk you could present to a community if you came in and making that decision to say, no, I can't go. And that's kind of the theme for everything that we're seeing now, especially as we head into the holidays. Don't gather, don't put people together, who aren't in their family bubbles, because of the risk that's involved as well. So is there anything else you'd like to have people know, like perhaps how can they watch your documentary?
Yeah, like you'd mentioned, it's in the film festival circuit now. You can go to crowcountrydoc.com to watch some, or view where the next screening will be. And also I'm going to have a live online community screening on Friday, this Friday the 27th, from 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And that'll be live on our Facebook page, Crow Country Doc.
Okay, and we'll also include that information in our write-up for this as well. So really wonderful talking to you, Tsanavi Spoonhunter, and thank you so much for sharing about your documentary.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be right back with a look at some more films made by and starring Indigenous peoples, just in time for the holiday weekend. As families start planning their holiday weekend, besides football, you can also watch a few movies that feature Indigenous actors and stories. Vincent Schilling is our Associate Editor, who has all the latest information on all things Hollywood because he also writes the Native Nerd column. Welcome, Vincent.
Hey, Patty. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So there's a new movie, this new mutant that just came out. Tell us a little bit about that.
The New Mutants. It's been a one of those films that was kind of hit hard by coronavirus in terms of being released, and they were one of the last, if I'm not mistaken, to sign a contract where they actually had to appear in theaters first, which really kind of diminished how many people could see it at first. And the reason it's significant for Indian country is the lead actor is Blue Hunt, and she's a native person who plays Danielle Moonstar, who was a native lead character. Back in the 80s, Chris Claremont created the New Mutants, and it was a diverse cast. And, so it was pretty exciting for me anyways. I actually interviewed Blue Hunt before it came out. And, the reviews weren't great on it when it first came out. And I just finally saw it. It just finally came out on video on demand. I know it's on YouTube, and you can buy it there as well as a couple other places, movies, anywhere I think. But I saw it and I'm like, what are the critics railing about? I actually really enjoyed it. I'm a true comic nerd, of course, so I really enjoy the psychological complexities of things. And I thought it was well cast, well done. And I really enjoyed it. We can even watch the trailer. We can watch some of that now.
What's the last thing you remember, Danny? He said we had to run. The reason you survived is because you're a very uncommon girl.
I am playing Danny Moonstar. She has just lost her family, and she's just arrived to this hospital.
This is a facility for young mutants like yourself.
She makes some friends and some enemies.
You don't scare me.
She has demons that have followed her entire life.
What's your power?
I don't know. Things start to get weirder, and her powers start to show themselves.
What's happening to me?
As she gets closer to everyone, their relationship really is the story. It's a race to save themselves and save each other.
Can you control it? Nobody can.
The New Mutants in theaters Friday.
Well, that's great. Another new film or production that's out is, or coming out, is Canyon del Muerto with Wes Studi and Corianka Kilcher, and I believe Tatanka Means.
Yeah, Tatanka Means. So it's a story about the anthropology and on tribal lands and I was talking to Tatanka Means about a week ago, and he told me he had an audition. So I'm pretty sure this is the one he was talking about, so we wished him luck, and my wife and I were talking to him, and he was like, yeah, pretty excited, and he couldn't really tell us much about it, but it sounds like a pretty interesting project, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. But one thing I didn't realize is actually Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez is going to be playing a cameo in this. So that was pretty cool. But the neat thing about this is, because I don't know a lot of details about what's the plot, etc. But one thing that's interesting to me is that, this is becoming newsworthy nationally, internationally. Variety magazine actually had a picture of Wes Studi, Corianka Kilcher, Tatanka Means in the front, and it's a lead story. People are talking about this stuff. So Native actors and actresses and writers and producers are making a stand for Indian country and in the film industry. So it's really great to see that these stereotypical stories of Native people aren't making the mainstream like they used to. This actual acting and for their acting and what they're doing is becoming the news, and that's exciting to me.
Well, that's something that we can watch for in the future here. But again, this weekend, as families are looking to gather around and watch some movies and such, what's up with Yellowstone?
Well, Yellowstone is now in its third season, and you can go to the Paramount Movies site, or they now have it on Peacock. And it's about Kevin Costner plays a rancher in the Dutton family against the Chairman Rainwater of the Broken Rock Reservation, played by Gil Birmingham. And it's a pretty intense series. They actually talk about a lot of the issues that affect Indian country, a lot of things like people who come onto reservation territories looking to abduct a woman and things like this, and the backlash between families, and then the backlash between a rancher who owns a lot of property and how the chairman feels about it, and fracking and it's very intense, very, very high energy series, and Gil Birmingham pulls it off, as well as Moses Springs Plenty, a lot of the other Native actors and actresses on here, and Kevin Costner does a great job. So it's a great show. It's pretty intense, honestly. I enjoy it.
Well, so far a lot of good films to look for. What else can we look out for this weekend?
Okay, well, okay. First of all, you got to see New Mutants. I got to give them a plug, because I just loved it, and it's just amazing to see Blue Hunt up there along with Anya Taylor-Smith and these other actors. It was well cast. But something I do want to say about it, and I'm curious what people think, is that Anya Taylor-Smith comes up and she says things like that are very racially charged things against the Native actress in there, and that became a point of contention for a lot of people. So I'm curious what people think about that, because to me, it's realistic. I'm not saying I enjoy that someone's being called names or being stereotyped, but I've got to say that it's a good movie. And something that's not a Native production or Native actor is The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. It's just an excellent. I actually even talked about it recently in an article, a Native Nerd article I wrote, and I actually thought it was exceptional. It was a seven-part miniseries based upon the game of chess, and it's just a really great series.
I binge watched that too over 2 nights, but I did. I really enjoyed it myself. And there are actually a number of Native chess clubs in the country, and so I really related to that, because at one point the White Mountain Apache tribe had a really strong young chess club. I mean, these were kids in elementary school, and then also on the Navajo and Hopi Reservation up in Tuba City, they had a very strong chess club, and they won the state tournament. This was years ago, but by winning the state tournament, they got the right to host the state tournament the following year. So chess is big in Indian country. Oh, absolutely.
You know, I used to always play with my dad, and I was pretty good, but I don't know about tournament play, and especially all that stuff that Anya Taylor-Joy, she's the lead actress in that, and she's doing all that stuff, and they study books and all. My gosh, I never do any of that stuff.
Now, there are some good young chess players in Indian country, so maybe we should write a profile on that or feature them sometime in the future here. Yeah. Anything else, Vince?
Well, I'm doing a quick native nerd column on the natives on TikTok, because man, it is blowing up on TikTok. There's a hashtag native family I really, really strongly recommend anyone to check out. I had recently done a post on the myths of Thanksgiving, and it's gone viral. Has like 125,000 views, and I'm not the only one. There are native creators all over TikTok, so that's going to be coming up soon.
Okay, all right. So Vincent Schilling, thank you so much for giving us the rundown on new films.
Thanks for having me, Patty. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Join us again tomorrow.
Indian Country Today is recorded at the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is Indian Country Today.